All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining. We're going ahead and get started. We're so excited to be here today and have this webinar put together by Paper. If you haven't already, recommend downloading their ebook on the 10 challenges facing districts this year. So earlier they interviewed 50 superintendents, CTOs, assistant supes, principals, and they highlighted some of the 10 biggest challenges that are happening right now. So there's a link going into the chat to go ahead and sign up to download that if you want to during this webinar or afterwards. So thank you so much for joining us. We are here with Cassie Parham. She's Assistant Sup for Education Services at Irvine Unified. Brianne Ford, Chief Technology Officer at Irvine Unified. And then of course, I am Laurel Nava, Director of Education and Partnerships with California IT in Education. Thank you, Cassie, and thank you, Bree, for joining us today. Just a quick background on CITE. We are celebrating our 60th anniversary. We started out as the California Data Processors Association with the punch cards and all of that. So you can learn more about us at CITE.org. We have regional groups across the state that are open to anybody in education. You don't have to be a CITE member, so you can sign up, get on a regional group listserv, or attend some meetings. And then we have a big annual conference every year. We're switching that to virtual this year. We'll have some major announcements going out about that on Monday, so we encourage you to check us out. So I just wanted to turn it back over to Cassie and Bree, and hoping you guys can give us a brief introduction.
Sure. I'm Cassie Parham. I am the Assistant Sup of Ed Services in Irvine Unified. This is my, 26th year in Irvine. I was also a student in IUSD. Really believe in our school district. I think we do a lot of great things. We're certainly not perfect, and COVID-19 has challenged us as it has challenged everyone. But we are excited to be here today and to talk a little bit about Paper, formerly Grade Slam, and the role that it has played in supporting our kids. We think that it's going to continue to play a really important role as we get our kids back and have to deal with learning loss and social emotional issues and all of the things that we know our kids are going to come back to us struggling with during this time. So excited to be here today to talk about Paper, to talk about our reopening plans and any other questions that come up.
Great, thank you. And Bree?
I'm Brianne Ford. I'm the Chief Technology Officer here at Irvine Unified School District. It's hard to believe, but in about a week, I'll have been at Irvine for 10 years in that position. One of the things that drew me to Irvine was the emphasis on equity and making sure that we provide the support that each child needs in every way that we possibly can. And so I'm excited to be here today to talk about the partnership we've had with Paper, answer any questions about how we've been using that to support our students, as well as all of the challenges that Cassie previously mentioned. I'm also deeply connected with CITE as a board member and as an instructor in the CTO mentor program.
Great, thank you. So let's start talking about what led Irvine Unified to start providing Paper to its students. And just to clarify, we're not talking about physical paper, but paper as a service.
Yeah, we're trying to get out of the business of paper, by the way. Yeah, no, so we've really spent the last 10 years focused on vehicles for promoting equity with students. And, you know, we have, and oftentimes people look at Irvine and say, well, you've got just really high performing kids and, you know, you don't have any challenges. And we have all manner of challenge. And one of the challenges is that we have high performing students, and we also have students who really struggle. And sometimes the focus is more on the higher performing student. And we really wanted to flip that. And we wanted to ensure that we were meeting the needs of every student. So even within the vehicle of our professional learning communities, the focus has been very explicitly on students who are struggling. We engaged in a number of different initiatives, including student shadowing, which was designed to help us really understand the needs of our kids better. We just raised our graduation requirements to 3 years of math and science because our African American, Black, Latinx students were not taking 3 years of math and science. So we've really, over the course of the last 10 years, tried to ensure that we're meeting the need of every student, and we know that we're still not there. And the way that Grade Slam came in, at least, you know, what made it interesting to me when I first started reading reading about the company was that, wow, okay, so we know that we have plenty of kids that use tutors, and it's really those families that can afford them that utilize them. And that's always been something that bothered me. And, you know, there's lots of different arguments around, and I hear it from teachers as well. Kids shouldn't need tutors. The reality is that they do, and they use them, and it's only the students that can afford them that have that service. So it was really intriguing to me, the idea of providing tutors to all of our students, every student, you know, and we started again at the high school level, and having it be a free service that was available to them 24/7. And the idea of it not just being 24/7, but also that they could get support in whatever discipline they needed. And I know many of our parents struggle once the kids are out of like primary to actually help their kids. I think, I don't remember that math. I don't remember how to do those things. So, you know, kids oftentimes, and we know especially how teenagers are wired, are seeking help at 11 o'clock at night, and there's no one there to help them. So it was really exciting to me to think about a support system that could provide something for all kids at any time of night and give them the kind of targeted support that they need. So all of that, there's so much that I could say, but that was sort of what intrigued me. It's like, let's level the playing field here. Let's ensure that every kid has access to high quality tutors. And the other thing that I found really interesting is, you know, tutoring works. And, you know, as much as you hear sometimes that, you know, well, they shouldn't need them and we don't want them, parents wouldn't pay for tutors if it didn't work. But the criticism you'll hear from teachers sometimes is that, well, it's because the tutors are giving them the answers. Well, with paper, we have highly qualified tutors who are not providing answers. You know, it's a Socratic dialogue. It's metacognitive. It's intended to have kids think about their thinking and come to the answers on their own, just with prompting and guiding. And so it's like, okay, so we have quality control. We have a service for every student. They don't have to pay for it. It's always there for them. Like for me, it was a no-brainer. I wanted to get involved, and then the company was just a fantastic company to work with, incredibly accessible and open and creative and willing to, you know, partner with us and listen to us and make changes based on things that we had shared. So anyway, that's my that's my opening.
Great. And Bri, do you have anything to add to that?
Aside from what she said. No, I think one of the things I'll just add from the IT lens is we were starting to see those patterns. We look at, as the IT help desk, we get about 40,000 to somewhere between 40 and 50,000 help desk tickets a year from our families and from our teachers. And one of the shifts that we were noticing in all of that over the past couple of years is so many of that the spread of when those come in, midnight, 5 o'clock in the morning is starting to increase. We have so many students who are requesting help late into the night, early in the morning, and so many staff that are struggling with the same challenge of this feeling they have to be always on and there for a caseload of almost 190 different students. We're hearing from our English teachers that there's just not enough time in the day to give the proper feedback that they want in that caseload. And so they were struggling with, I think another issue on the equity focus is for students making the same mistakes over and over again. They're stuck on something in the middle of the night and they try to power through it. And so they're spending a crazy amount of time on this one thing, and either consistently doing it incorrectly for the remainder of the assignment, or just getting so frustrated and pouring time into something where they just need a little bit of support. And I think in addition to leveling the playing field from an academic perspective, what Cassie talked about, our concern was sort of that well-being of staff and students in this kind of always-on environment. Is there something we can do that whenever somebody needs help, that it's there at their fingertips, and that it doesn't have to be a source of anxiety, that they can get live and meaningful support right when they need it.
So this year has been, you know, drastically different, obviously. So can you talk a bit about the impact of COVID with all of this, with the sudden switch to distance learning and how that 24/7 support became even more used probably than it was before.
Yeah, I can jump in here. I think our students have slowly begun making greater and greater use of paper. And if you look at our numbers during COVID, we actually didn't have a lot more students take advantage of it, but the students who did take advantage of it were using it a lot more. And I think that's because, again, all of a sudden they're home and their teachers are not as accessible and the questions still exist. And so I think it made sense that, you know, they were going to make even greater use of kind of that lifeline because they didn't have the same opportunity to see their teachers for office hours. And we're, to be honest, I think every district was in the same place. We were still just trying to figure out EDL. We know instruction wasn't perfect. We surveyed our families, and we had a significant percentage who felt like there wasn't enough done, and part of our challenge was that we had to move so quickly. We basically moved from in-person instruction to distance learning in the span of 2 days, and did our best to train our teachers. But I think at that point in time, having very capable tutors accessible 24/7, our students are like, wow, I'm going to use this because I know I can get an answer when I need it, and I don't have all of the support that I need right now. That's not to say that a lot of our teachers didn't do a great job. They did, but the speed at which we had to make that change, and just different teachers have a different facility with technology, and Bree can speak to that better than anyone because it's her team has just borne the brunt of so much of this challenge because we had to educate people along the way, our teachers, and provide them supports and train them on the fly and give them access to things they haven't used before. So it's been a really difficult time.
Yeah, and one of the things that we recently had a podcast, Stephen, about the digital divide and how that's been affected during the pandemic. I've heard terms instead of summer slide, the COVID slide. What are you seeing so far this year, and how has this helped support it?
So we haven't started yet. Our school year starts next week. Based on our numbers right now in Orange County, we will not be returning in person for, it looks like, the first few days at least. We're still on the monitoring list. So what we have done in anticipation of that learning slide is designed a whole host of pre-assessments so that as soon as we have the kids with us, we can start assessing where they are and tailoring the instruction to meet the needs of our students. And we fully anticipate, based on everything that we have read, that we'll have many kids who need remediation, who need additional time, and who will definitely need tutoring services and additional support from teachers.
Great. And Bree, can you talk briefly about that from your perspective in your department? What does this year look like for your staff?
This year looks like any number of things. I think for us in IT, Cassie was exaggerating a little bit, saying we had 2 days to shift to distance learning. We had all night on the night we found out, and we had the whole weekend as well. So it was, we had much more time than that. It's been incredible, exhilarating, and also incredibly challenging and exhausting in the shift to the distance learning for the IT team, but also looking at what it's done with our teachers and our students. If we think about our teachers in Irvine are amazingly facile with different learning modalities in the classroom. Cassie's team and Ed Services has done an amazing job working with teachers on differentiating instruction, identifying students and intuiting what they need, how to alter your approach, how to help those students in the classroom. And it felt like when we went so abruptly into distance learning, it was like a wall was erected between teachers and students. They lost a lot of that visibility into how the students were doing, those checks for understanding, and teachers were really great at kind of making that effort, but there was such a sense of loss, I think, on both sides. As they did live instruction, obviously connectivity issues, device access issues, and just how-to issues. We had parents still working and kindergartners trying to navigate how to jump on a Google Meet on their own at home. And, we have all of those kinds of situations. And at the high school level, you're missing that sacred window of the content and the instruction, and students were suddenly behind in feeling disconnected. And so I think for us, in addition to all of the efforts that Cassie's team was doing and our ed tech team was doing about what are some strategies that you can use in distance learning, I think GradeSlam felt, and GradeSlam, I should clarify, GradeSlam was formerly named Paper. We're working on that habit of changing, of using the new name, but Paper was great as that sort of catch-all safety net. If students missed 15 minutes of instruction, and so they were just missing that one core school and a skill to solve a problem that could connect with GradeSlam. If they were really lost, if they just didn't have support at home, and they wanted to have an essay previewed, not just for sort of grammatical and spelling that you can get through typical online services, but for the attentiveness to the rubric, the same strength of the argument. They had GradeSlam as that extra resource. And I think anything that we can do at this point to provide an individualized environment for our students for getting that support, where our staff are already feeling just sort of overwhelmed by the requirements of shifting their curriculum, shifting their instructional style to an online environment, trying to make sure students are connected and getting what they need. It's been like being able to populate with our district with 24-hour instructional aids for those high school students that we've made GradeSlam available for, and it's been really, really incredible.
So any changes from, we talk about having the whole summer. In reality, it was more like, 5 or 6 weeks. What is changing with how you're providing instruction or anything between spring and what you have starting next week?
I guess the question is what isn't changing. We really tried to, as I mentioned before, we did survey our parents, we surveyed our teachers, we surveyed our students to try to get a sense of what worked for them and what we called emergency distance learning and what didn't. And what we learned from all of that feedback is that, one, we need to have more synchronous instruction. There needs to be tighter structure and schedules for students. I think one of the challenges, and Bree sort of alluded to it, when teachers we made the shift really quickly, and then teachers weren't actually in perfect coordination. So they would have office hours kinds of experiences in the spring, but they weren't coordinated. So a kid had to choose between, do I want to talk to my math teacher? Do I want to talk to my science teacher? Thus, even more reason why they would need to contact a tutor in the evening, because they couldn't have that one-on-one with their teacher. So live, synchronous, more structure, more opportunity for students to be in small groups dialoguing. We are in the process right now. We have a professional learning day on Monday, and it's really, the whole day is structured around the things that we need to do differently this year when we're in a distance learning environment to support students more effectively. So those are just some of the things. And we also, gosh, we're launching a virtual academy, IUSD Virtual Academy. That's been a really fun challenge. Usually that's something I think that would take years, and we're doing it in a matter of weeks. But we're excited about that because it's not just, we are partnering with Florida Virtual. We also have our teachers working with that curriculum, backwards mapping it to our essential standards, beginning to integrate they're putting kind of their stamp on it, making it more of their own. And we're using that in conjunction with all of the courses, the IUSD blended learning courses that we've developed. So we have a virtual academy. We also have a traditional model. We have a hybrid model. We have multiple education models that we'll be putting into place next week.
All right, so I want to be sure to get the question that came up in the chat. Students who are using it, Paper, sound like they're using their own incentive to seek out tutoring. How are you reaching out to the kids who aren't using it but may actually need it?
It's a really good question. We did a lot of things working with Phil's team this year around just kind of, we met routinely and talked about where are we not seeing sort of infiltration, where do we want to see greater usage, and we would look at that. And then we tried to do things like target like key times, like to pushing reminders around finals out, like it's finals time. Have you connected with GradeSlam? No, Paper. Trying to kind of leverage those opportunities when we know kids naturally need more support. I think it's honestly honestly less about our kids though, and more about our teachers. We've had to do a lot of work to get them on board because, as I said in the beginning, you have teachers who believe that we shouldn't even have tutors. Tutors shouldn't exist. And then you also have, this is really fun, the tutor is helping them in a different way than I'm helping them, and that's not ideal. And my response to that kind of is, okay, well, if that student is able to come to the solution and find the answer, I'm not really all that concerned about how they got there, but there's a little bit of that too. So we've had to bring our teachers along and help them understand these tutors are not, they're thoroughly vetted. They're not providing answers. They are a tremendous resource. And I think one of the features that actually has had a pretty positive reaction has been when paper added the essay component, because I'm a former English teacher. You can never have enough adult eyes, even student eyes, on a paper. You want lots of people reading it and providing feedback so that that student takes the time to revise, which is so critical. So that's been an important feature that has been pretty well received, and we're bringing our teachers along. It takes time because it's the teachers who really do need to remind the students to use it, or to ask them even in a class setting to utilize it. Hey, you guys, this is another resource for you that you should be relying on. It's there. And they need to play a role in promoting, and that's happening more and more, and it's going to continue to be a focus for us.
So can you talk a little bit more about the essay review? What does that look like from a teacher perspective? What does that look like from a student perspective?
It's pretty amazing. They just upload their paper to paper and basically the tutor gives them feedback on it. So they're looking at it. It's not just surface competency. They'll ask them questions about their ideas, about the evidence they provided. It's just giving them feedback that they can then read and integrate into their paper before they submit it to their teacher. And we have teachers who now are saying, okay, do this first. Make sure that I want you to have a peer editor. I want you to submit it to paper. I want you to have this many people look at it before I even see it, because I want you to have done the hard work of the revision before I see what is hopefully close to a final draft. So it's an amazing feature, and our kids are using it more and more, and our teachers actually like it. So yeah, we were thrilled with that addition.
And there's a question in the chat about how do the tutors from paper actually see the assignment? And is this through a single sign-on? Do they submit? Is it through Google Drive? Or
if you're going to get technical on me, I'm going to defer to Bree.
All right, Bree, you're on the spot.
Yeah, so paper is integrated with Canvas, and so that provides really easy access direct from the courses where the students are used to accessing. It's also integrated with Google Sign-On. So the students are submitting things in the way that they're already accustomed to submitting things through systems we already have. There's not necessarily, of course, they have a separate website, but they've worked with us really well to integrate it. So it feels really comfortable for the students to be able to submit it where they're at. I think the thing and I had mentioned this earlier with paper, that really impressed me about the student essay submissions was the fact that they're not just giving that surface level feedback about the writing style, but they're also giving feedback if the students provide the rubric. We've seen paper tutors giving feedback on the strength of the argument, the alignment to that teacher's rubric, other true content revisions that give the students more quality feedback than before. I did want to loop back a little bit to talking about that building buy-in that we were talking about earlier. And Cassie talked about making the rounds with the sites and really helping the teachers to see the benefit of it for the students and overcoming that little bit of tutor bias. One of the things that impressed me really with paper is when Cassie and I first started talking about this, all of my 20 years of IT, every radar went up, right? Well, are they going to be vetted? Are the tutors going to be screened? Are they going to be qualified? Are they really going to be available when the students need them? What if we have an issue with the tutor? What's the resolution process? What are the staffing of the company like? Can we trust them? Because it does feel a little bit like you're turning over the students to this environment of people that we haven't necessarily personally vetted. NIUSD, what about student data privacy, of course? And I have to say, with every conversation we had with paper early on, they checked every box. So I think From a vetting perspective, I couldn't come up with a question that they didn't have the answer I wanted in terms of how teachers were vetted, what we could do if we felt that a tutor was really not taking an approach that we thought was good with students. And we have the ability to review those interactions between tutors and students. And I thought that was pretty amazing. They also turned around a signed California Student Data Privacy Agreement, I think in less than 24 hours to us. So I really appreciate the company's commitment to that quality and that privacy. And every person that we've met within the company has exuded that. And so I think part of what's been helpful in our rollout has been just the authenticity of the people that Grade Slam or Paper, I'm working on it, Paper has sent out to help to roll it out in class. We've had some visits by their team to have in a class, have students log on for the first time, get that experience using the software. And I think the approachability, the authenticity of those individuals that are working for the company have gone a long way to build the buy-in with our teachers as well.
And you mentioned that they can, you can see the interactions between the tutors and the students. What does that look like from a teacher perspective? Do they log in daily and view the comments, or does that show up on the final submission?
So they can. It would be an overstatement to say that they all do that, but they have the ability to look at the transcript between the student and the tutor. And our dream, you know, what we hopefully will happen at some point is that every teacher will take the time to do that, especially in front of like an exam, so that they can see, are there common threads? Are there concepts that students are struggling with just across the board that I need to revisit? I thought I had it nailed and that clearly I didn't because they keep asking these questions. So it's so powerful, I think, in that regard, because it can inform teaching as well. And that's another feature that we really like. And it's completely transparent. So if you think that, you know, there's any answer giving go on, then spend the time to go in and look at the transcript, because we can guarantee that's not happening.
Mm-hmm. So it becomes almost like a formative assessment tool in a sense.
Exactly, yeah.
And so a question from the chat, do tutors offer plagiarism checks? Is that part of it? And what's the turnaround time?
I don't know if they use like Turnitin or anything like that. I don't know that they do that. I'm sure that they ask questions if it doesn't sound like, if the voice isn't consistent, if it doesn't sound like, I mean, if they see something that is obviously plagiarized, I'm sure they're going to ask that question. I don't know whether they use any kind of formal mechanism for assessing whether there's something plagiarized. Oh, it's my favorite part.
She got her leg stuck in the bed.
Oh.
Yeah, so the plagiarism check, like Cassie, I don't know that the tutors themselves are doing that plagiarism check. We do have Turnitin in our Canvas instance, and so we are doing that on our side as well when students submit work. The turnaround time, I know that we've discussed with Paper was 24 to 48 hours for most essays. And so if we think about what our teachers were reporting for them being the one and only person to provide feedback on students' work, for a secondary teacher, that might take weeks to really get that high quality feedback. And so to be able to have students submit something like a 5 to 10 page essay and have it turned around within 24 or 48 hours for that first draft, and to build that experience of not a series of first drafts, but a series of revisions and really working on content has been pretty amazing.
Another question in the chat. So we can see tutor-student interaction transcripts. I think that's from an administrative standpoint.
Yes, you can. Teachers can. We can. You can go in and actually see the dialogue that occurred between the between the tutor and the student. And again, it's really helpful to sort of know what the students are struggling with and what they need more of.
Great. So letting Laurel get the baby centered there. So another question here on the usage. what was the biggest change you noticed in your distance learning support during COVID? You covered that a little bit, Cassie, I think in a little bit earlier, but maybe reiterating, how have you guys shifted now that you're doing 100% distance?
Shifted in terms, I'm not sure I understand the question.
So, you know, rather than teachers, you know, being left on their own to work on these things, have you guys had to, you know, you talked a little bit about extra training that you're
Yeah.
doing next week. So maybe talk a little bit more about what that training is going to look like next week.
Sure. So our full day on Monday is devoted to, well, actually the afternoon component is focused on social justice because that's very timely and really important. But the morning is focused on distance learning strategies and how to take your classroom virtual. And basically what we have done, and I love we, the royal we, right? Like I have not done this, but my team has done this and it's absolutely phenomenal with Bree's team and their support. But they've built Canvas shells that basically have all of the features that the teachers will need to be able to populate them, and they're phenomenal. It basically allows a teacher to begin with a very solid foundation of what students need to be able to see, reminders around let's make sure we begin with a social emotional component, things that show students sort of the schedule and the expectations, and then again all of this, the tools that they'll need to be able to effectively communicate. And part of the impetus behind that was that we heard from our parents, like teachers are using 20, 30 different tools and I don't understand any of them. So creating one consistent frame, that canvas, so that every parent, student will see that shell and become familiar with what lives in that shell, was a way to create some continuity. And then our day, and we actually have multiple days. Monday is all teachers, but we've also provided for pay additional training throughout the summer focused on distance learning and learning that, you know, whether it be Zoom or whether it be Google Meet and all of the things that we use inside of that, and strategies for how you group students and strategies for, you know, basically how you do the things in your classroom in a virtual environment well and how they need to look different and what need to be included. All of that training is happening and will continue to happen with a really big rollout on Monday, because we start on the 18th, I think. No, we start on the, when do we start? Is it the 20th? The 8th? I don't know.
It's COVID time. It all blends together.
It's like stream of consciousness.
I'm sorry, wait, did we end the school year?
Right, exactly.
Because we haven't stopped for like 3 minutes, but it's
Oh.
actually August 20th. It's next Thursday is the actual start date, and the Monday is our professional learning day.
Weekends were those things we had back in like January.
What's a weekend?
So one question that just came in, and I want to ask you about onboarding. So keep that in the back of your mind, but do want to answer this question that just came in. Why was it something that required both the tech side of the house and the ed services side of the house in your district?
Oh my gosh, because I was like, this is a great idea, and Bree, how do we do it? And I'm like, I love this company. I love everything about this. I love the opportunity for our kids, every single kid, to get this support. And I need you to help me make it legal. I don't want us to get sued. I want this to work. I want it to be seamless. And of course, that's when Bree comes in and the mastermind and her team start making sure that all the pieces are in place for us to be able to, you know, engage in this really exciting initiative. So I do think, and I really honestly cannot say enough about Bree. She's phenomenal. And I think one of her brainchilds was developing an ed tech team. And that ed tech team has been, I think, so instrumental in helping to bridge the divide between IT and ed services, because they are kind of the hub. And I think our teachers have begun to see the power of technology in part. I mean, they don't see all of the hard work that happens in IS. They just assume it's going to happen. The ed tech team, they see a little bit more, and they interact with more, and because they're providing support, direct support to the classroom and helping them with all of the tools that they need to be able to learn to function well as teachers. So that's been a really important connector, that team between the two sides of the house. But again, it's like we have ideas and then Bree helps us figure out how to make them actually happen.
Okay, so when you did, I'm not certain, when did you start using it, and what did that process look like to set it up and onboard everybody from both tech and ed services side?
We started with it would be late in spring, or basically summer 20. It feels so long ago. Summer 2018 was when we brought paper on board, and we started. That's right? Those paper folks out there. I think summer 2018 was when we got it on board, and we started with just a couple of small tests where we pinged a few summer school teachers to try and use it, to get a sense of what the experience was like, to get some feedback on the technical setup so that we could make it as easy as possible and transparent. We worked through some issues, and again, the paper team was fantastic. Their CTO at the time, we identified a couple of things that were non-starters for us, and it was practically overnight. We got response within minutes that we're working on it, and we got continuous updates, and they had it all resolved before the fall. So they were so wonderful to work with. And then in the fall, we did sort of an enhanced pilot where we were on the tail end of really transforming our math curriculum at that time. So Cassie's team did this phenomenal job on what we've called math pathways work, but really reworking our math curriculum from the ground up to make sure students are supported and that they're getting those essential standards, and that there's pathways that are articulated for them from their early years of education all the way through. And so with that, we knew that there was some heightened anxiety around math and all that reworking. So we started with a pilot around math, and then just a couple of English teachers to see how it would go. And then after some really positive feedback, a lot of great work with the paper team on how do we scale this up, we made the decision this past summer to go district-wide for grades 9 through 12 for the rollout of paper. The deployment from a technical perspective, and I don't know if I should say this after Cassie was so complimentary about our team, but the deployment for the technical perspective was pretty easy at the time. So we were using Canvas for the LTI, and I know, I think Jason Miles may still be on the call, one of our genius programmers who makes everything connect in our district, but so the integration was pretty straightforward for getting Canvas up and running. And really what our team, our ed tech team, then turned around after the IS team handled the quick integration and really focused on user guides, training materials, sort of adapting papers, marketing materials, and they gave us a lot of really good resources to incorporate Irvine specific language, Irvine specific instructions layered within that. So the rollout was actually pretty quick. I think from the time that we had a signed contract to the time that we actually had it up and running for those summer school courses, it was probably only about 2 weeks.
Wow, that is fast. And then Cassie, what did that look like for introducing to teachers? Did you hold webinars? Did you do in-person trainings?
So we did, the team, again, Phil's team has been really helpful in terms of being able to actually come and provide training to teachers in person. So that's been a component. And we work through our principals in Irvine quite a bit, and have the principals promote and support and encourage, and also tell us, okay, where are the sticking points? Like which departments are really resistant? And it's interesting, as much as the greatest, if you look at the data, math always comes up, right? Our kids need support in math, but sometimes our math departments have been the most resistant in terms of wanting students to use tutors. So it's finding out, okay, where is the resistance, and then pushing that team in, because Phil's team is really likable. I'm going to say they can win most people over. And while you can say no to somebody, through email or this or that, when you actually see them, it's harder, especially when you understand what their mission is, which is just to support all students when they need it, and in a way that helps them to actually learn deeply, not just check a box. So, it's been the in-person training. training. It's also, we've really made an effort, and Bree's team has been super helpful in this too, and trying to meet every couple of weeks just to touch base, like problem solve, troubleshoot, what's coming up, what's a good opportunity to promote, what's something that, we need to be aware of, is usage down, is usage up. Just having those every couple of week conversations have been really important in allowing us to adjust and maximize the resource.
Great. And so Irvine is often seen as a model district for so many other districts. And just a couple of questions more that came in through the chat about your ed tech team. Do they report to ed services? Do they report to IT? And are they centrally based, or are they at every site?
So I can answer those questions. Ed tech reports to me and IT. I'm on executive cabinet along with Cassie, our assistant superintendent of business, and our assistant superintendent of HR. So ed tech is part of the IT team. However, we have them strategically situated in the district office. So they are actually in a physical location that demarks a bridge between where IT is, as far as, IS, network services, and the administrative side of IT, and ed services. And then we find that works out really well. Although the IT department, the ed tech department reports to me, the director of ed tech, Cassie, has opened her doors. Our director of ed tech participates in all of Cassie's coordinator director meetings on the ed services side. So she really does wear both hats. And I know Cassie talked about the partnership and relying on us. I will say the experience here at Irvine Unified and Cassie's team, and how tightly coupled our two departments are is really phenomenal. She's included us in every initiative that they are working on, whether or not there's a perceived IT component or not. And that's been vital to, I think, the success of a lot of what we do, is that kind of early and often communication with ed services. And then for the ed tech team, we have a centralized ed tech team that has software support, a few TOSAs that focus on professional learning, and then our actually website development falls under ed tech. We do provide stipends for a couple of teachers at every site to provide some kind of embedded on-site support as well, but the ed tech team is centrally located.
Great. And we talked a little bit about onboarding, adoption with teachers, but I did want to go to a question about increasing the usage among students. How did you roll that out to students? How did they take it? Did they use it a lot initially? How did you increase usage?
So we initially started just by advertising the service through registration and full disclosure, asking for donations. Anything we can do to sort of offset the cost is helpful. That was kind of the first step. And then just, having teachers, really trying to get our teachers on board so they would share it with the kids. And then again, looking at kind of key times during the year where we knew there would be a need and promoting that need. So right around finals, when there were big assignments, just having that reminder go out from our schools to use the resource. And I think, and it's definitely paper as a component, but going back to what Bree was saying about the nexus between our departments, we're constantly trying to think about what are the silver linings of COVID-19, because there's a lot that's not great, and we know that, a lot that is really devastating. But there's no question now that teachers are seeing the value of technology, and parents, right? And so having a really strong partnership between education and technology, I think, is absolutely critical. And if it doesn't exist in districts now, it's going to need to, in order to be able to serve our students well in this environment in the future. And I think what I really hope is that through this virtual kind of experience, we begin to understand how to leverage the time in person with kids. What can we do virtually, and should we be doing virtually, and what should be happening in the classroom? How do we maximize that in person? So again, I do think there are some things that have come from this experience that have highlighted the power of technology and the importance of the partnership between ed services and IT and IS and ed tech. And we've learned a lot, but I think part of the reason we've been successful, and it's, again, we are not perfect and we have made mistakes and we are struggling and we have speed wobbles, we're moving so fast, but I think a lot of our success that we have had is attributed to the strength of that partnership. And we just have really great people who are willing to work 24/7 to support kids.
Yeah. And then, you know, you'd mentioned the math rollout too, or some of the changes when the math curriculum was coming out. And I self-confess, I took the sample Common Core State Standards math test, and I wondered how I ever graduated anything. Could you talk a bit too about how you worked with the English side of the house, especially since your background as an English teacher? How did you bring in the essay review components and integrate that with them? Was there resistance, since that's such a different modality?
Less resistance, to be honest, than with other things, because again, you know, anytime you can get more eyes on a paper, it's a good thing, because we want students to be getting feedback, and we want them to have an opportunity to sort of look from different perspectives at their papers. But we, you know, again, we really do utilize our principals quite a bit in IUSD. We ask them to engage with their teachers and their departments and to talk about how things can be utilized. And we also we really believe in the pilot system where you find a few people and ask them to kind of try things. And so we did that, as Bree said, in summer school. In some of our classes, our EL classes, you know, that was a great opportunity for kids who really are still learning the language, a low stakes opportunity to get feedback without a grade. I mean, what we do know is that some of the learning, you know, the best learning occurs on low stakes kinds of assignments where kids don't feel threatened. So knowing they're just going to get feedback and not a grade, it's like, okay, great, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to take that feedback and I'm going to make it better. So we've used pilot teachers. We have used our principals to really push in and remind departments to make use of this resource. And I think, you know, we still have work to do. We obviously need to have greater usage, and we're going to continue to make that a goal. I think it's going to happen on the natural this year, just because the need will be there, but we also need to be strategic, and again, looking at where we don't have the same levels of usage. But, you know, as a former English teacher, I always kind of laugh, like I swapped essays for emails. I mean, I remember the weight of, you know, I had 170 kids and 170 papers, and they were 5 pages each, and it was a month, and that was me working dutifully every single weekend to get through them. And so again, I did lots of peer editing and did everything I could to get other people to look at these papers. But if I had had paper and tutors, it would have been from the get-go. You guys, I don't even want to look at it until you've uploaded it, gotten that feedback, integrated it, show me that you've integrated before I even look at that first draft. I want it to be so much better so that I don't have to spend that time, and you need to do that time. And that's, again, I think the power of having that kind of Socratic dialogue and having a tutor ask you questions rather than give you answers. When they ask me the question about, okay, how does this evidence support this thesis? I have to try to defend it. And when I see that I can't defend it, then I know I have more work to do before the teacher even has to look at it. So again, it's such an obvious, valuable asset. And we are going to work really hard to ensure that our kids are making the most use of it this year. I think at one point in time, paper promises like 24 hours, but there were a few times we did overload them, I'm going to say. like, let's test the limits, let's see. But we just want all of our kids using it. There's no reason why they shouldn't.
And so, you know, we could look at assessments, but I mean, assessments are going to be weird for last year, this year, and next year, most likely. But what have you heard anecdotally from teachers? Have they seen an improved quality on essays in particular? Since that's harder to measure sometimes than, you know, just pure math problems.
Yeah, it is harder to measure, and it's actually an interesting question, and we probably do need to look at it more carefully. It's like what nexus do we see between the students who are making greater use of the tutors and their grades? We haven't done that kind of analysis, and we probably should, and this you know, might be a good year. So, you know, again, with the paper component, a piece of it is just teacher time, right? When that paper comes to you and it doesn't have a million flaws in it, and there is a strong argument, and you're finding a couple of things that need work, that saves me time, and that's huge. So, and we, you know, again, most of it is anecdotal, but this would be a good year for us to get a little bit more granular and look more carefully at, you know, the nexus between usage and performance and achievement and teacher time.
Jason Miles, hope you're taking notes, because I think you know what project's going to come to you shortly.
And Jason can do it.
Yeah. So we have about 10 minutes left. I just want to encourage anybody else who has questions to enter it in the chat. We did have one question come up. How is the work distributed to the tutors as it comes in?
probably a paper question.
I think paper, I know leading into that, when we asked a lot of those questions early on, they do use predictive analytics to determine sort of the volume of staff that they need on available in any subject area at any time. And based on our feedback from the sites, they've done a really good job in predicting that. But I think it'd be better asked by paper as far as once it gets past that point of staffing, how do they actually distribute it?
Any folks from paper, if you want to break in, go ahead and go ahead.
Sure, I can jump in while I'm here, guys. Welcome to our audience. I'm hopping in, happy to answer that question. Thanks so much for joining us. In terms of how the work gets distributed to the tutors, Bree, you sort of nailed that. We do use predictive analytics in order to staff accordingly. And then there's a matching algorithm that takes into account the tutors' abilities and where they traditionally teach, and then the question of the course that the request is coming from, and then it gets matched accordingly with the best available educator. And then in terms of the essays, it's a similar process as well. Obviously, we don't go through each essay, but we look at the grade level and the expectations, and then it gets matched accordingly. And that's also both algorithms, the scheduling and the matching, are constantly refined. So they get better the more that students use it. So in the case of an Irvine, those algorithms will be pretty accurate. And so you'll actually have some really, really strong fidelity in the matches, which is great.
Great. And Cassie, earlier you talked a bit about English language learners. Can you talk a bit more about that, what the experience has been for those students and for those teachers, and how they've utilized it?
Really positive, because again, it's not, when they're submitting that paper, they're not submitting it to the tutor for a grade, right? They're just submitting that paper to get feedback, and that's what they need. They need feedback on conventional usage. They need feedback on, how well they're reading the book and integrating the evidence from the book. So again, it's anecdotal, but we've heard really positive things. And for the most part, and again, paper does a phenomenal job with quality control of their tutors, but our kids love the tutors. They like the feedback. They develop relationships, and sometimes they'll request the same one, and I know paper tries, and that's not always feasible, but they trust and appreciate. And again, when you take the grade out of it, it makes a big difference. And so especially for your kids who may struggle with writing, having this like low stakes opportunity just to get feedback is absolutely critical. And to get that feedback in a 24-hour time frame is just phenomenal. I mean, it just doesn't happen and wouldn't happen when we have the kind of numbers that we do, because our classes are big. The total class size, I think the max class size in Irvine, or max total number for a secondary teacher, is 187 students. So it's not small. It's a huge responsibility, and having the support of someone who can provide feedback and help students kind of find their voice and strengthen their language is invaluable.
That's great. So any final questions or thoughts that we didn't cover so far? All right. I just want to thank you both for making this time today. It's absolutely insane, all the planning that we're doing. Keep hearing stories of people getting pallets of Chromebooks that need to be distributed. So we have one more question that came in. And I think this is a paper question, so heads up, Phil. Will you be offering a session on how to use paper for students and teachers?
Yeah, absolutely. For every customer, they're paired with our customer success team. And those are the ones that both Cassie and Bree have alluded to. In the past, we used to come on site. I don't know how feasible that's going to be this school year, but we do provide full training for teachers and students as well. And now we've actually integrated into the product specifically, so that now, as every school is in this remote distance learning setting, and we're dealing with the ebbs and flows of everything COVID related, you're actually going to be able to do that from an autonomous perspective as a district with our support as well. So you have kind of two options there. And so we're if you're a customer using us, you'll have all the support you need to get trained up on for your staff and your students as well.
Great.
People also want to see screenshots of how it's used in Irvine. We have a public-facing support site with articles about it at support.iusd.org. And so you're welcome to take a look at those.
Support.iusd.org?
Yeah, support.iusd.org.
Put that in the chat. Great. All right. So thank you again for taking the time to join, and thank you, Paper, for putting this together and being on here. Oh, we're getting another, yeah, so another comment is for English language learners, it's the support is 24/7 in both English and Spanish for this school year. So I know that's a big deal, especially in a state like California where we have so much diversity. And Cassie, as the wife of an English teacher, when you were talking about all those essays, I always dread when the crates come home with the 200 essays. So anything that can make, you know, the extended lives of people better is great in my book as well.
Yeah, so one of my favorite people in the world is an English teacher said that her recurring nightmare is that her car is stolen and there are 150 essays in the back that are graded.
Exactly, exactly. Not yet entered in the system. Yeah. Especially because the kid's going to come back and want to know exactly why.
Right. I mean, if your car was stolen and the essays weren't graded, that's a bummer, but nowhere near as bad.
Yeah, completely. So, you know, in closing, just want to encourage you, if anybody wants to learn more about Paper, you can go to CITE.org /sponsors to get the link to Paper. Or, you know, of course, you can always reach out to them directly, or I'm sure Bree or Cassie would be happy to direct you to anybody that you need to talk to there. You mentioned earlier the silver lining of COVID, and I was hoping we could just maybe think for a sec about a silver lining for each of us. I just wanted to share my silver lining has been, as you can see, more time with my kids, for good or for bad. But the great thing is just watching them grow and watching their language change so much. And it's just great to get a front row seat on that through this pandemic. So if you have any more silver linings you'd like to share, be happy to close with that.
You know, I think in any, I mean, this is unprecedented for sure. We've never had an experience like this in the US. I mean, but I think you begin to realize how grateful you are for the people around you who in Irvine. I mean, everyone has given so much, and I will never forget. I mean, I think of you know, Bree's team, and I think of, you know, Marty and Jason and Harmony and all of these people who are working, and they are picking up the phone at, you know, 11 o'clock at night, and they are picking up the phone on the weekend, and they are so incredibly devoted to supporting our students and supporting our schools. And I think, wow, I mean, I really do believe that educators could probably solve all the world's problems if we just, you know, were given the opportunity, because we have really amazing people. And I think COVID has brought that to the forefront for me, is that I could never, ever ask what we have asked of this team. And they've responded without being asked. I mean, it's been phenomenal. So I'm really grateful to be in this organization with these people.
Great, thank you.
What she said again.
Ditto number 2.
but specific, so expanding on that too, I think one of the things that being forced to shift to an all distance learning environment, I think it has created this sense of really deep empathy and greater understanding for what our students face in their home lives, and even what our teachers and our staff and our colleagues face in their home lives. And there's I think, for where I think technology can be really powerful, and particularly tools like Paper, around differentiation and individualization, and that just in time, the exact support that one child needs. I think this has been enlightening. This has really sparked interest and commitment to that level of empathy and individualization, and I hope we don't ever go back.
And so speaking of that, sorry, one more question slipped in. We talked about English language learners, but support for students with special needs. How does that look like?
I mean, the beauty of paper is that it's there 24/7 for all students. And I do think it's actually a really good question, because this year, as we look at, one of our greatest challenges in the virtual environment has been supporting our special needs students. Because so much of, especially for our higher needs students, that's hand on hand. You know, you're working really closely with them. So I think we will be looking at how to integrate paper more purposefully into supporting our students with special needs, because they're going to need wraparound services like they've never had before. And you know, we will definitely be relying on the support of tutors and being thoughtful about how we can connect them so that they know how to use that resource, and parents know how to use that resource. Because that's, again, consistently what we hear from parents, is that they don't know how to help, you know, and they're struggling too. So having a lifeline, which is what I really do consider paper to be, is like a lifeline, has never been more important. So helping them to see how to utilize it, giving them that access and that resource is going to be critical this year. So again, we're going to be even more strategic about making our students and our parents aware of the product and the service and how to use it, and really encourage that.
Great, thank you. So final thank you to everyone for joining us. This session was recorded, and we will be sharing it if you want to share it with anybody else. And thank you again to Paper for hosting this and joining CITE as a sponsor. We're really glad to have you.
I'll just jump in here quick, guys. Thank you so much to the whole Irvine team for being here, but particularly Cassie and Bree. You guys are awesome. And I truly do think that Irvine is one of the best run school districts in North America by a mile, having interacted so closely with you guys, and you know, and seeing the way, you know, having been a teacher, I know what it's like. You don't always love working with your administration. We truly see that, you know, within your whole organization, the love that your teachers and your administration has for the whole community and for Irvine. And so we really love working with you guys as well. And to the whole CITE team, thank you guys for putting this together. What you guys do, you know, from a community perspective within California is so important. The CTO mentorship program, you know, we hear about it time and time again across all of the different districts. It's I really think it plays a key role in making California a leader in education and leveraging technology to be a leader in education. So without you, I don't think that it would necessarily be the same. And you know, having recently rebranded from Grade Slam to Paper, I have a lot of empathy for you guys going from SEPA to CITE. So you know, we certainly understand what a rebrand can look like. But you know, I think both of the organizations, Irvine and CITE, you guys have been fantastic, and we love working with you both.